My son's girlfriend leaned back in her chair, phone pressed to her ear, and laughed in Spanish. This old fool has no idea what's coming. He's practically handing us everything on a silver platter. So pathetic. She didn't know I was standing just around the corner. She didn't know I'd spent 23 years living in Mexico City. I understood every single word. And what I heard next made my blood turn to ice. Before I tell you what happened in my own kitchen that afternoon, let me know in the comments. Where are you watching this from? The smell of fresh coffee filled my San Antonio home that Saturday morning. At 64, I'd grown comfortable with my routines. Wake up at 6, coffee on the porch, then a few hours restoring vintage furniture in my garage workshop. My late wife Carmen had always joked that I'd turn our garage into a museum someday. She wasn't far off. What my son Derek didn't know, what almost nobody in Texas knew, was that I'd spent over 2 decades working as an international business consultant in Mexico City. I'd married Carmen there, raised Derek there until he was 12, and conducted business meetings entirely in Spanish for years. When we moved back to the States after Carmen's mother passed, I rarely spoke Spanish anymore. It felt too connected to memories that still ached. But the language never left me. It lived in my bones, as natural as breathing. Derek had been dating Isabella Reyes for 8 months now. She was 29, strikingly beautiful, with dark curly hair and a smile that could light up a room. She worked as an event coordinator at a downtown hotel, or so she claimed. My son was absolutely smitten. "Dad, I'm going to propose next month," Derek had told me 3 weeks ago, his eyes shining with excitement. "Isabella's the one. I've never been more sure of anything in my life." I wanted to be happy for him. I really did. But something about Isabella had bothered me from the very first dinner she attended at my home. Her laugh seemed rehearsed. Her compliments felt scripted. And the way she watched my house, my furniture, my belongings, it reminded me of appraisers I'd worked with back in my consulting days. She was calculating value, not admiring memories. But I kept my concerns to myself. Derek was 35, old enough to make his own decisions, and maybe I was just being an overprotective father who couldn't let go. Then came that Saturday afternoon. Derek had brought Isabella over for lunch. They were in the kitchen helping me prepare enchiladas, a recipe Carmen had taught me decades ago. When Derek stepped outside to take a work call, Isabella's phone rang. "Un momento," she said sweetly to me, then walked toward the living room to answer. I continued chopping onions, but my ears perked up when I heard her switch to rapid Spanish. Old habits from my business days kicked in automatically. "Sophia, you won't believe how well this is going," Isabella said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "The old man is completely clueless. He has no idea I speak Spanish, so he just smiles like an idiot whenever I'm around. This house alone is worth at least $600,000. And Derek told me his father has a retirement account worth over $2 million. My knife froze mid-chop. I know, she continued laughing. 8 months of pretending to care about this boring accountant and his pathetic widower father. But it's almost over. Once we're married, I'll wait maybe a year, then file for divorce. Texas is a community property state, remember? I'll walk away with half of everything he has, plus whatever I can squeeze from the old man before he dies. The onion fumes suddenly had nothing to do with the tears forming in my eyes. The best part? Isabella's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. I'm still legally married to Eduardo in Monterrey. Derek doesn't know, obviously. By the time anyone figures it out, I'll be long gone with the money. This stupid old man and his lovesick son are the easiest marks I've ever found. She laughed again, and the sound made my stomach turn. I forced my hands to keep moving, chopping mechanically while my mind raced. Every instinct screamed at me to storm into that room and confront her. But 23 years of business negotiations had taught me something valuable. Never reveal your hand until you're ready to play it. When Isabella returned to the kitchen, her face was a mask of sweetness. Sorry about that, she said. Just my cousin checking in. Is there anything I can help with, Mr. Harrison? No, dear, I replied, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. You've done more than enough. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word Isabella had said. Still legally married. Community property. Easiest marks. The phrases burned in my mind like brands. Carmen's photograph sat on my nightstand, her smile frozen in time. "What do I do?" I whispered to her image. "How do I save our boy without destroying him?" The answer came to me around 3 in the morning. I needed proof. Not just my word against hers, but concrete evidence that Derek couldn't dismiss as paranoid delusions. He was too deep in love to believe his father's accusations alone. I needed help from someone who knew how to dig up the truth. Monday morning, I drove to Austin to meet Frank Delgado. We'd worked together for 15 years in Mexico City. Frank had been my head of security, a former federal agent who knew how to find information most people wanted to stay hidden. He'd retired to Texas Hill Country 5 years ago, but we still played golf occasionally. "Raymond Harrison," Frank said, embracing me at his front door. "You look like hell, my friend. What's wrong?" Over coffee on his back porch, I told him everything. The overheard conversation, the Spanish she didn't know I understood, the claims of a husband in Mexico, the calculated plan to drain my son's finances. Frank listened without interrupting, his face growing more serious with each detail. "You're sure about what you heard?" he asked when I finished. "No chance you misunderstood?" "Frank, I negotiated contracts in Spanish for 2 decades. I understood every word perfectly." He nodded slowly. "Then we need to verify her claims. If she's really still married in Mexico, there'll be records. Marriage certificates don't disappear. And if she's done this before, you think she has?" Con artists rarely start with a score this big. There's usually a trail. Frank pulled out his phone. "I still have contacts in Monterey. Give me her full name, date of birth, anything you have. I'll make some calls." 3 days felt like 3 years. I went through the motions of normal life, having dinner with Derek and Isabella, pretending everything was fine. Each smile I gave her felt like swallowing glass. Each time she called me Dad made me want to scream the truth, but I held my tongue. I watched. I waited. Isabella made small mistakes now that I was paying attention. She asked too many questions about my will. She suggested Derek should add her to his bank accounts for emergencies. She mentioned how expensive funeral costs were these days, looking pointedly at me as she said it. Derek noticed nothing. Love had made him blind. On Thursday evening, Frank called. "Raymond, you need to come see this. It's worse than we thought." I drove to his house immediately. Frank had spread documents across his dining table like evidence at a trial. "Isabella Reyes isn't her real name," he said, pointing to a Mexican ID card. "Her legal name is Maria Elena Vega. She's 34, not 29. And yes, she's married to Eduardo Vega in Monterey. They got married 7 years ago, and there's no divorce record anywhere." My heart sank, even as my suspicions were confirmed. "There's more." Frank handed me a folder. "This isn't her first time. I found records of 2 other American men she targeted. One in Phoenix, one in Houston. Both were divorced within 2 years of marriage. Both lost significant assets. Neither could prove fraud because she was careful about documentation. She's a professional, a very good one. The husband in Mexico appears to be her partner. They've been running this scheme for at least 5 years. I stared at the evidence, feeling sick. What do we do now? Legally, this is immigration fraud if she's trying to obtain citizenship through a bigamous marriage. That's federal territory. Frank pulled out another document. "I have a contact at ICE who owes me a favor. If we bring this to them with solid evidence, they can open an investigation." "And Derek?" Frank's expression softened. "That's the hard part, Raymond. Your son is going to have his heart broken no matter what. The only question is whether it happens before or after she takes everything he has." I thought about Derek's face when he talked about Isabella. The joy, the hope, the absolute certainty that he'd found his soulmate. I was about to destroy all of that. But Carmen's voice echoed in my memory, something she'd told me when Derek was just a boy. "Our job isn't to protect him from all pain. It's to protect him from the pain he can't recover from." "Make the call," I told Frank. Special Agent Patricia Morales met me at a federal building in San Antonio the following Monday. She was in her 50s, with sharp eyes and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen every scam imaginable. "Mr. Harrison," she said, reviewing the documents Frank had provided, "your friend did excellent work. This is exactly the kind of evidence we need to pursue an investigation. What happens now? We'll verify everything independently, of course. But if this checks out, Maria Elena Vega has committed multiple federal crimes. Immigration fraud, Identity fraud, wire fraud, if she's moved money across state lines. Agent Morales looked up from the papers. The question is how we proceed. We could simply arrest her, but that might not give us enough to prosecute her husband and any other accomplices. What's the alternative? Controlled operation. We'd need your cooperation to set up a situation where she might incriminate herself further. If she admits to the scheme, mentions her real husband, reveals how they've done this before. Agent Morales paused. It would give us a much stronger case. The weight of her request settled over me. You want me to trick her. I want you to give her enough rope to hang herself. There's a difference. I thought about Derek, about the devastation this would cause either way. My son has to be there. He needs to see who she really is, or he'll never believe it. That can be arranged. We'd wire your home, position agents nearby. When the moment is right, you'd reveal what you know, and we'd move in. When? How soon can you arrange a dinner? That night, I called Derek. My hands were steady, but my heart was breaking. Son, I've been thinking about what you said, about proposing to Isabella. Dad, if this is another lecture about taking things slow. No, Derek. Listen. I took a breath. I want to throw an engagement party, next Saturday, at my house. Just family. You, Isabella, and I'll invite Aunt Martha and Uncle Joe. A proper celebration. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I worried he'd seen through me. Dad, are you serious? You've barely said 2 nice words about Isabella since you met her. Maybe I've been too hard on her. Your mother would want me to give her a real chance. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Please, son, let me do this. Yeah, okay. Isabella will be thrilled. She's been worried you don't like her. After we hung up, I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at Carmen's photograph on the wall. Forgive me, I whispered. I'm about to break our boy's heart, but I'm doing it to save him. Saturday arrived with the kind of beautiful spring weather that felt almost cruel given what was about to happen. I'd spent the morning cooking Carmen's recipes, filling the house with aromas that reminded me of happier times. Enchiladas, rice, beans, fresh tortillas. A celebration meal for an engagement that would never happen. The FBI had wired my dining room the day before. Agent Morales and her team were positioned in a van down the street, listening to every word. Aunt Martha and Uncle Joe weren't coming. That had been a convenient fiction. Derek and Isabella arrived at exactly 6 o'clock. She wore a stunning red dress, her makeup perfect, her smile radiating warmth that I now knew was completely manufactured. Mr. Harrison, this is so generous of you, Isabella said, handing me a bottle of wine. Derek told me you wanted to celebrate our engagement. I'm so touched. Please, call me Raymond, I replied. And you're practically family now. The words nearly choked me. We ate dinner. Isabella complimented every dish, asked about the recipes, mentioned how wonderful it would be to learn Carmen's cooking traditions. Derek beamed at her with pure adoration. I played my role perfectly, asking about their wedding plans, discussing possible venues, even suggesting they honeymoon in Cancun. Each pleasant exchange was a knife twisting in my gut. As we finished the main course, I saw Isabella check her phone under the table, a text message that made her smile. Everything okay? Derek asked. Just my mother checking in, Isabella said smoothly. She's excited about meeting your family. Another lie. According to Frank's research, Isabella's mother had died 12 years ago. I stood to clear the plates. Isabella, would you mind helping me in the kitchen? Derek, why don't you pick out some music? She followed me willingly, still playing the dutiful girlfriend. As I rinsed dishes, I watched her reflection in the window above the sink. You know, I said casually, I've been meaning to ask, where exactly in Mexico is your family from? Guadalajara, she answered without hesitation. My parents moved to Texas when I was 10. Interesting. My late wife was from Mexico City. We lived there for over 20 years. Something flickered in Isabella's eyes. Caution, maybe. Or calculation. That's wonderful. Did you enjoy it? Very much. I became quite fluent in Spanish, actually. Carmen always said I spoke better than most natives. The color drained from Isabella's face so quickly I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. You speak Spanish? I turned to face her directly, switching languages mid-sentence. Perfectly, Maria Elena. I understood every word you said to Sophia on the phone 3 weeks ago. Every single word about the pathetic old man and his lovesick son. Every word about your husband, Eduardo, in Monterey. Isabella's wineglass shattered on the floor. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Derek!" she screamed, backing toward the door. "Derek, your father has lost his mind. He's making up insane accusations." Derek appeared in the doorway, confusion written across his face. "What's going on? Dad, what did you say to her?" "The truth, son." I pulled the folder from where I'd hidden it beneath the counter. "Her real name is Maria Elena Vega. She's 34 years old, and she's been married to a man named Eduardo in Mexico for 7 years." "That's a lie." Isabella's voice cracked with desperation. "He's trying to destroy us because he's jealous. He can't stand that you love someone more than him." I spread the documents across the kitchen counter. Marriage certificate, Mexican ID, photos of her with Eduardo, records from her previous victims. "She's done this before, Derek. 2 other men in Arizona and Texas. She marries them, waits for community property laws to kick in, then divorces them, and disappears with half their assets." Derek stood frozen, his eyes moving between me and Isabella. "Bella, tell me he's wrong. Tell me this is some kind of misunderstanding." For a moment, her mask slipped. I saw the real person beneath the performance. Cold, calculating, cornered. "You stupid old man," she hissed at me in Spanish. "You should have minded your own business. We would have been gone in a year, and you never would have known." "But I did know," I replied in the same language, "because you underestimated the old fool." The doorbell rang. Agent Morales entered with 2 federal officers, badges clearly visible. Isabella tried to run toward the back door, but agents were already waiting. "Maria Elena Vega, you're under arrest for immigration fraud, identity fraud, and conspiracy," Agent Morales announced. "You have the right to remain silent." Isabella screamed curses in Spanish as they handcuffed her. She called me names I won't repeat, threatened revenge, promised Eduardo would make me pay. The agents led her away without ceremony. Derek stood motionless in the kitchen, staring at the scattered documents. His face had gone pale, his hands trembling at his sides. "Dad," he whispered, "how long have you known?" 3 weeks. Since I overheard her phone call. 3 weeks. His voice cracked. "You've known for 3 weeks, and you didn't tell me? Would you have believed me?" The question hung between us, heavy with truth we both recognized. Derek sank into a kitchen chair, his head falling into his hands. "I loved her," he said, his voice breaking. "I was going to spend my life with her." "I know, son. Everything was a lie." "Everything." I sat beside him, placing my hand on his shoulder. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Outside, the FBI vehicles pulled away, taking Isabella toward a future of deportation hearings and federal charges. "Why didn't you just tell me what you heard?" Derek finally asked. "Because you would have defended her. You would have said I misunderstood, or that I was being paranoid, or that I was prejudiced against her for being Hispanic." I paused, the truth of it settling between us. "You would have chosen her over me, and then she would have made sure you never spoke to me again." Derek looked up, tears streaming down his face. "You're right. I would have. That's exactly what I would have done. I couldn't risk losing you, son. Not to save your feelings." He nodded slowly, wiping his eyes. "Mom would have done the same thing. She would have been smarter about it," I admitted. "She always was better at these things than me." The ghost of a smile crossed Derek's face. "Remember when she figured out my college roommate was stealing from me? She had proof before I even suspected anything. Your mother could read people like books. I like to think she taught me a few things over the years." We sat in silence for a while longer, the weight of the evening slowly settling. Finally, Derek stood. "I need some time to process this," he said. "A few days, maybe. Take whatever you need." At the door, he turned back. "Dad, I'm sorry. For not trusting you. For choosing a stranger over my own father. You didn't choose her, Derek. You chose love. There's no shame in that. But I should have listened when you tried to warn me. Maybe. Or maybe you needed to see the truth with your own eyes. Some lessons can only be learned the hard way." He nodded, then surprised me by pulling me into a hug. "Thank you for protecting me. even when I didn't want to be protected. After he left, I stood in my doorway watching his taillights disappear down the street. The evening air carried the scent of spring flowers, and somewhere a mockingbird was singing its endless repertoire. 4 days passed before Derek called again. I spent them in my workshop, restoring a 19th century writing desk that a client had brought me. Working with my hands had always helped me think. "Dad, can I come over?" His voice sounded stronger than it had Saturday night. "I need to understand everything. How you knew, what you found, all of it." "Of course, son. I'll put coffee on." He arrived with breakfast tacos from our favorite spot on Commerce Street. We sat at the kitchen table, and I walked him through the entire investigation. The overheard phone call, the meeting with Frank, the documents from Mexico, the FBI involvement. Derek asked hard questions. Why didn't I record the phone call? Why didn't I confront her immediately? Why did I let it go on for 3 more weeks? I answered honestly, even when the answers weren't flattering. I was afraid, I admitted. Afraid of being wrong, afraid of losing you, afraid that she'd somehow talk her way out of it and convince you I was the enemy. She almost did, Derek said. That night in the kitchen, when she was screaming that you'd lost your mind, there was a split second where I almost believed her. What changed? You spoke Spanish. He shook his head slowly. All these years I had no idea. Why did you never tell me? It was connected to your mother, to our life in Mexico City. After she died, speaking Spanish felt like. I searched for the right words, like visiting her grave, painful in a way I couldn't explain. Derek reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I wish I'd known. About the language, about your years there. There's so much about you I never asked. There's time now. Over the following weeks, our relationship transformed in ways I hadn't expected. Derek started coming over every Sunday for dinner. We cooked Carmen's recipes together, and I taught him the Spanish phrases his mother used to whisper to him as a baby. Slowly, painfully, the wounds began to heal. Agent Morales called in late April with updates. Maria Elena had pleaded guilty to multiple charges in exchange for testifying against her husband, Eduardo. The investigation had uncovered 3 other victims, besides the ones Frank had found. Apparently, she and Eduardo had been running their scheme for nearly a decade, targeting widowers and divorced men across the Southwest. Your cooperation made a real difference, Mr. Harrison, she told me. We've dismantled their entire operation. Other families will be protected because you were brave enough to act. It was small comfort, but it was something. One evening in May, Derek arrived with news of his own. I've been thinking about what you said, he told me over dinner. About trusting instincts, about reading people. And there's a new vendor at work. Something about her felt off. The way she pushed for quick decisions, avoided putting things in writing. He smiled slightly. I did some digging. Turns out she has a history of lawsuits, hidden behind a shell company. Pride swelled in my chest. What did you do? Reported her to compliance. They're investigating. Derek met my eyes. 6 months ago, I would have ignored that feeling, told myself I was being paranoid. And now I know the difference between paranoia and wisdom. A young man came into my workshop the following week, carrying an antique jewelry box that had belonged to his grandmother. As I examined the damaged hinges, he hesitated. Can I ask you something, sir? It's about my girlfriend. Go ahead. She's been pushing to move in together, talking about joint bank accounts, adding her to my car title. We've only been dating 4 months. He looked troubled. My dad says I'm being paranoid, but something feels wrong. I set down the jewelry box and gave him my full attention. Trust that feeling, young man. When someone rushes you toward permanent decisions, ask yourself why the timing matters so much to them. But she says if I really loved her, I'd show it by sharing everything. Real love doesn't come with conditions or ultimatums. If she can't understand your need for caution, that tells you something important about her character. He left looking thoughtful. I hoped he'd listen to his instincts. Not everyone has a father who speaks their girlfriend's language. Carmen's photograph still sits on my nightstand. Every night before sleep, I tell her about my day, about Derek's progress, about the families I hope we've protected by exposing Maria Elena's crimes. Our boy is going to be okay, I whispered to her last night. He's more careful now, but not cynical. He's learned to trust his gut while keeping his heart open, just like you always hoped he would. The Lord works in mysterious ways. He gave me 23 years in Mexico for reasons I never fully understood at the time. Now I see his purpose clearly. Those years, that language, those instincts I developed, they were all preparation for the moment when my son would need protection from a threat he couldn't see. Looking back on this journey, I've learned that a father's job never truly ends. Our children grow up, move out, build their own lives, but we never stop watching over them. We see dangers they can't. We love them enough to act, even when it means becoming the villain in their story for a while. The hardest lesson I've learned is this. Sometimes protecting someone means letting them hate you temporarily. Derek resented me for those 3 weeks I kept my secret. He might have resented me for years if I'd told him too soon, and he'd refused to believe me. But God knew what I couldn't see then. He knew our relationship would emerge stronger, built on truth instead of comfortable lies. He equipped me with everything I needed, the language skills, the loyal friends, the investigative experience, and most importantly, a father's unshakable love. These betrayal stories remind us that evil often wears a beautiful mask. Maria Elena's deception was masterful, but the Almighty places people in our lives, parents, friends, mentors, who can see what we cannot. The wise person listens, the foolish one pushes them away. If this story touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to protect someone you love from a danger they couldn't see? Have you ever been that danger for someone else without realizing it? Share this video with parents who understand that love sometimes means saying the hard things. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories about family, courage, and the wisdom that comes from never giving up on the people who matter most. Because at the end of the day, that's what family is about. Not protecting each other from all pain, but standing together when the pain comes. Not always agreeing, but always loving. Not being perfect, but being present. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's about understanding exactly what someone says when they think you can't understand them at all.